Welcome back. On the foreign scene, U.S. President Donald Trump has been visiting the sites of Dayton and El Paso, where 31 people were killed over the weekend in mass shootings. The president visited survivors, first responders and staff of Miami Valley Hospital in Ohio, where 9 people and the suspect were killed in a rampage. Simon Pusey has more international stories in Around the World in 5.
From the Channel's newsroom here in London. Donald Trump visit the sites of mass shootings in Ohio and Texas amid warnings he will not be welcome. The attacks in Dayton and El Paso left 31 people dead. President Trump spoke out on racism and hatred following the shootings, but has been accused of stoking the same sentiments he sought to condemn. There are a mountain of flowers, messages and candles at both sites of the shootings. The city's hospitals continue to treat those wounded in the attack, and some of the survivors are still coming to terms with the horror. As the communities grieve, some politicians in both cities say the president isn't welcome.
The words that he has used to describe Hispanics and immigrants have fueled a lot of that hatred and that bigotry and have inspired some violence.
At least 14 people have died and nearly 150 injured after a car bomb targeted a police station in the Afghan capital, Kabul. There has been no let-up in violence in Afghanistan, even though the Taliban and the United States appear close to a historic pact for US troops to withdraw in exchange for a Taliban promise that the country would not be used as a base from which to plot attacks by extremists. Both sides say there has been progress in negotiations, which aim to bring a nearly 18-year war to an end. The blast happened in the west of the city during the morning rush hour. The Taliban said a recruitment center had been attacked by one of their suicide bombers. Demonstrations in India have continued 3 days after the country scrapped the special status of Kashmir. Carrying banners and placards, demonstrators marched through the streets chanting slogans against Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Meanwhile, protests continued in Pakistan against the government's decision. Hundreds of protesters in Muzaffarabad, the capital of Pakistani-administered Kashmir, marched through the city and set fire to an effigy of Mr. Modi. On Tuesday, India passed a bill to divide the state of Jammu and Kashmir into 2 union territories, automatically stripping the state of its special status. Protesters called the move anti-constitutional. Many parts of Kashmir are still under curfew or facing restricted movement with a ban on gatherings. Mobile phone networks, landlines and internet access have all been cut. More than 5 million people in Zimbabwe, about a third of the population, need food aid, with many coming close to starvation. That's according to the UN. The World Food Programme has launched a $331 million appeal as the country battles the effects of drought, a cyclone and an economic crisis. Recent harvests have been badly affected by drought and the price of food has risen sharply. The country is also facing a financial crisis and has reintroduced the Zimbabwe dollar a decade after it was abandoned amidst rampant inflation. Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Areza has rallied against new US sanctions against the OPEC nations, saying that Washington was after its petrol. Trump signed an executive order on Monday that freezes the assets of the Venezuelan government and bans any transactions with it, an act that could ensnare its dealings with Russia and China, as well as with Western companies.
We know that this is all because of petrol. We all know that this is because of Venezuela's riches. Mr. Donald Trump, concentrate on your election campaign. Mr. Donald Trump, concentrate on your discourses of supremacist hate, of racism, the direct consequences of which we have seen in Ohio and Texas in recent days. The United States is trying to make Venezuela its territory for its geopolitical war against Russia and China. As with the Cold War, in the periphery you have Afghanistan. That's what they are trying to do here in Venezuela.
North Korea has stolen $2 billion to fund its weapons program using cyber attacks. That's according to a leaked United Nations report. The confidential report says Pyongyang has targeted banks and cryptocurrency exchanges to collect cash. The news comes as North Korea released new photos of the country's leader Kim Jong-un watching their latest missile tests. North Korea launched 2 missiles on Tuesday, the 4th such launch in less than 2 weeks. And finally, Israel's National Library says it has received the last part of a collection of Franz Kafka's writings that it planned to put online after winning an ownership battle for part of the novelist's literary estate. The papers had been held by sisters Eva Hoff and Ruth Weisler, who argued they had illegally inherited them from their mother. The archive includes 3 draft versions of Kafka's story, wedding preparations in the country, an exercise book in which he practiced Hebrew, hundreds of personal letters to Brod and other friends, and travel journals. Since 2008, the library has won a series of legal rulings granting it possession of the documents. And that's your international news around the world in 5.
FRANZ of Tunisia out now winners of the 2018-2019 Champions League. Ayo Balogo will tell us more.
Yes, indeed. We started off with the FIFA team in Nigeria. Well, they have inspected the country today. That's in Asaba on an inspection tour. Well, the team officials of the Nigeria Football Federation and Delta State Sports Commission assessed the state of facilities at the Stephen Keshi Stadium. Nigeria is bidding to host the FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup next year.
As part of the legacy plan, lots of facilities have been upgraded or will be upgraded in the next time. So this is obviously what we like in order to develop football everywhere around the world.
It's not a question of whether Delta State stands a chance. We are looking at the global picture of hosting a FIFA tournament, in which case, as a nation and as a federation, we should provide the requisite facilities and services that are befitting of that tournament.
Well, next up for the inspection team was the Godswill Akpabio International Stadium in Uyo. Governor Emmanuel Udom assured the team that Akwa Ibom will be ready to host the World.
And before this tournament comes in 2020, I can assure you we'll produce at least 2 more up-to-date international standards, facilities and everything complete. Of one, at least a sports stadium, and the second one, a full-fledged sports center.
The Confederation of African Football has declared Esperance Football Club of Tunisia as winners of the 2018-2019 CAF Champions League. This followed the decision by the CAF Disciplinary Board, which ruled that Wydad Casablanca of Morocco abandoned the second leg of the final and as such have forfeited the match. But the Disciplinary Board imposed a fine of $35,000 on the Morocco side for walking out of the pitch and the use of flares by their supporters. Falconets head coach Christopher Danjuma has unveiled his list of 18 players to represent Nigeria at the women's football tournament of the 12th Africa Games scheduled for Rabat, Morocco from August the 17th to the 29th. The Super Falcons' first choice, Chiamaka Nadozie, tops the list. Joy Duru, Falashade Jamilusi, Bashirat Amo, Akudo Ogbonna and Christiana Obia are also in the squad that will battle Cameroon, South Africa and Zambia in Group B of the tournament. And that's a wrap on Sports News. I'm Ayotunde Balogun.
Thanks a lot, Ayo. And the main news again. Lawmakers in the Kogi State House of Assembly today began impeachment process against the State Deputy Governor Simon Achuba over media utterances, but the Deputy Governor is insisting that he is unruffled by the action of the lawmakers. Also today, police authorities accused soldiers of killing 3 police officers and a civilian and setting free a high-profile kidnapper in Taraba State. And U.S. President Donald Trump today visited the sites of 2 mass shootings in Ohio and Texas, where at least 31 people were killed for alleged hate crime. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Mwawadu. Good night.